Welcome to episode 496 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Jay Hilton. He's Levon, a.k.a. Barcelev, and just like last season, a season where FC Barcelona won the Liga by 10 points, the domestic campaign begins with a 0-0 draw with a team from the Madrid area. It feels like deja vu, just like last year. Last season, it was Rayo Vallecano. This year, it was Getafe. And it's tough, Levon. The panic button is sitting right there. I mean, you and I are on social media. The panic button is right there. But I know neither of us are obviously going to press it right away for that quick doom clout that you can get on social media. You know, you hit the button, you get all that good clout for being negative. But I know neither of you or I are hitting that button. But we are instead, with the nature of a 0-0 draw, we're going to play a little game of overreaction, underreaction today after the Getafe match, because I saw plenty of everything from that match. Are you ready to play the game, Levon?
Yeah, man, bring it on.
All right. So I think we can even start from front to back, back to front. I don't know, regardless of where you want to start. I actually think we begin with, not to say the excuses, this is a Barcelona podcast, so a lot of people listening are Kool-Aids. And if you're not a Kool-Aid, well, then I guess skip to like the 10-minute mark, because we're going to start with overreaction, underreaction to the refereeing and how that performance, as in the performance by the referee in Cesar Sotograto and his performance with refereeing, the existence of VAR, and we'll say the lack of use of VAR on off the ball incidents, things like that. Are you overreacting or underreacting to the idea that refereeing in the Liga is not necessarily conspiratorial, because that has existed for 80 years in the Liga in Spain, but that it's just bad, that it's not even like conspiratorial towards Madrid, that it's just flat out bad and needs to improve?
Can I say both?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that there is more. Not that Madrid never gets like bad calls that go against them, and I think in the VAR era, at least the last 2 seasons, Madrid was treated fairly, as in they called things fairly in Madrid games the last 2 seasons. But I do think that even referees who are not intrinsically biased towards Madrid because they were fans of Madrid when they were a kid or whatnot, um, the um, the backlash that they get for um, for either a controversial call against Madrid or a controversial call in favor of Barcelona is a lot higher, because that is on a national institutional level that they receive that pressure,
Right.
and that pressure um, can translate into getting called up for less matches, which in turn translates in their financial well-being. Um, so when you see a game like Getafe, where I don't know, Getafe should have gotten at least 5 yellow cards before before Rafinha lost his head, where Damian Suarez elbowed Gundogan quite hard in what's the area called? Plexus? What's the area like?
Your solar
Where if
plexus.
the solar plexus, yeah, where if you hit somebody, the guy cannot breathe, right?
Mm-hmm.
That part. He elbowed him really hard there, and that could have easily been a red card. VAR could have easily intervened. And most of all, where after 115 minutes of football, we get a clear penalty, because there's no way that was a handball of Gavi. Even if it were a handball, it would have been involuntary. Um,
Wait, can we get in
it
that? Because I agree with the point. Like there was multiple things there, and my thinking and how I like ABC'd it through the refereeing's decision. My thinking is that, to that point, I think it was inconclusive whether or not it was a handball on Gabi. Where I don't think, if it was to set the scene, if that was just the call, if it was on the other side and Gabi was defending and they didn't call a penalty on that handball on Gabi and Barcelona's defending, I don't think that gets overturned to be a penalty, right? So my thinking was that the kick on Araujo 100% is a penalty, but because it was not initially called a penalty on the field, that the referee said it is inconclusive whether Gabi's is a handball or not. And because that was inconclusive leading up to the definite penalty, that we cannot, again, because the Gabi part is inclusive, that is not enough to overturn the fact that Araujo was kicked and that it is a penalty. And I know, no, listen, I know it sounds convoluted, but that was the only way that logically I could think through that makes sense to me. That they could not overturn it because it was not definite that it was not a penalty. I mean, a handball on Gabi. Like the question of whether or not it was a handball on Gabi meant that it could not be overturned to be a penalty
No,
for
but
Rob. That's
but
again my only logical reason as to why that was not a penalty.
no, but VAR intervened because Araujo got kicked, not because Gavi may or may not have handled the ball.
Yeah, but that's what they were
Um,
looking at. They were looking at the
so
Gabi handball. So you're saying that you think the
no,
referee just
then no,
thought
then
handball on
they,
Gabi, so it wasn't
they
a
looked
penalty.
at both because first the referee looked at Araujo getting kicked.
Which is
That was
100%
the first.
penalty.
That was the first thing that they showed him on the VAR. And the other thing here is that it was a foul on Gavi, so we should have gotten a penalty regardless because
Mm-hmm.
Gavi got fouled and then Araujo got fouled, and for some reason we don't get a penalty because Gavi may have touched the ball with his arm while a defender was dragging him down.
Yeah.
It's
No, that's
it's
that's I
ridiculous.
mean, I'm
It's
just trying
ridiculous.
to logically
It's
work through why the referee wouldn't have given him a penalty in that
it's
situation.
ridiculous. Now, if this is because the guy expects brownie points of Florentino Perez, or because he's afraid to call a penalty for Barcelona after 115 minutes of football, I don't know. But it was it was outrageous. It was outrageous, and this after a match in which, again, Getafe can play however they want to play. I never complain about how Getafe plays, just like I never complained about how Atleti plays. But it's a referee that needs to intervene and say, well, I'm sorry if you keep throwing people onto the floor even when the ball is nowhere near, you're going to get yellow cards for this.
Yeah.
I guess that's the referee's job. It's not Getafe's job um, uh, to be a perfect gentleman or play like perfect gentlemen against a team with a budget that is 10 times bigger than their budget.
Yeah. I mean, he did finally put his foot down. Damian Suarez, podcast favorite, Damian Suarez, did get his yellow in the 82nd. So he did
Sure.
finally dole out some justice in the 82nd minute on a guy that just had earned 3 or 4 yellows prior to that point. Okay.
Exactly. So now back to that point, like because the referees at halftime, they they do get together and they do discuss how the match has developed. So I'm sure that um, the VAR referees will will tell Sotorado at halftime, look, Getafe are doing everything that God's forbid, but we cannot intervene because they are not red card fouls. Most of them are yellow fouls. But they're constantly pushing and pulling and elbowing people to the ground. So the referees know what kind of match it is, and then because I can kind of appreciate that it's these kind of fouls are difficult to catch as a referee when you're the one
Mhm.
running up and down, and usually your eyes are on where the ball is. And Getafe makes those fouls when the referee is not watching most times. But at the very least, if you know that this is the scenario that we find ourselves in, at the very least, when there is a VAR intervention, don't be ridiculous. Just call the penalty when it is a stone cold penalty.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
mean,
this is just adding insult to injury. It's ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, a lot was added to that game too. It was the longest game in the Liga since the 2007-08 season. The total time of the game was 115 minutes and 54 seconds. The actual play time was only 60 minutes and 49 seconds in terms of stoppages. And what's more incredible about that match as well with the 07, going back to the 07-08 season the last time and most of the other times that more than 110 minutes have been added in Liga history, it's because either an ambulance has had to come on the field or there's been some kind of huge stoppage of play based on a cataclysmic injury that has caused a huge stoppage. And there was no such injury in that game, which makes it somehow even more absurd, as if that game just had all that extra time added just because of the gamesmanship of it, which, yeah, it's incredible. Okay, we're going to go to individual players or people now, looking at Lewandowski first, because after that match, and I think you know how it always is, right? When the ball starts rolling about a player's performance, positive or negative, that ball seems to roll down that hill faster and faster and faster. In the case of Lewandowski, I think you and I have kind of held the line. It's like, I mean, you can look at individual games, and to me, my only frustration with Lewandowski, and why I'm going to start this by saying I'm underrating how done and dusted Lewandowski is, and his time at Barcelona is over. He's going to be inflated, costly for the next 3 years. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying that Lewandowski, what he shouldn't have done, and why I criticize him, is because just like Rafinha, he lost his head in a way that, like, he just. I know they were kicking the living daylights out of him, and the ref didn't do his job, sure, but like Lewandowski was taken out of that game mentally. It felt like by Getafe, and same thing with Rafinha. It's just like they just seem to be taken out of the game, and you've got to be able to just kind of deal with that. Like, I know you're getting elbowed and kicked and knocked down, but Lewandowski was kicking back too. So it's like, well, if you got your receipt back and you kick them back, now you've got to be even Stevens and get back after it. It just felt like Lewandowski lost his head in the first half and never really recovered from that. Yeah, it just like can't happen. But I'm underreacting to the idea that he's not going to score 25 to 30 goals a season. Like that's it's crazy to say that like Lewandowski is a full step and a half back. I mean, I know he struggled, and you and I talked about it last year after the World Cup. Like, he's not been the same, but he also had that back injury, and he said he's recovered from that, so we have to believe him. And I just think that, yeah, he started the same way against Rayo Vallecano last year. He started the preseason last year, scoring what, 1 goal in 5 games. Like, I'm not going to go crazy about Lewandowski not scoring against Getafe when he lost his head. So I'm underreacting to the idea of Lewandowski being need to. Well, even the case to throw to you, like people asking whether or not Xavi should just start by like benching him, by substituting Ferran Torres in for him in the very next game to send a message. Like, again, I also underrate that idea. Lewandowski just starting.
Um, yeah, I don't know about doing it in the very next match. I mean,
How many would
talk
it
about
take for you
talk,
before
talking about
Xavi has to?
talking about blowing up the dressing room.
Right,
Um,
right. That's what I mean. But how many matches or how many struggles does Lewandowski have to have before Ferran Torres is starting then?
like we're not at training sessions, so it's difficult to say.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine that during trainings, either Ansu or Ferran consistently light it up. Then what do you do as a manager, right? Lewandowski is the man, but maybe after 2, 3 matches, in under the guise of hey rotation, you give somebody else a shot at number 9. Um, I I personally love rotation. I think we have a huge squad. We have a lot of talent in a lot of positions. The central defenders will get rotated. Like would anybody be surprised if the next match we have um, 4 defenders who are not Araujo, Koundé, Christus, and Balde? No. The same in midfield. Would anybody be surprised if the midfield gets rotated the next match or the third match? No. So why would it be different for Lewandowski, especially if he's playing poorly and let's say other attackers who can play centrally are training really, really well? And then the question comes, hey, what do you do if, imagine you put Ferran there in the third match and he scores a brace? Then you have a problem because then what are you going to do the fourth match?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think there's a little bit of an overreaction too to like the idea that, I mean, to me, him on the field, not to say that I'm not as concerned, but I'm less concerned about him on the field and struggling on the field of Lewandowski than I am about his, I've talked about before on the podcast, about his contract. Like, he's owed a lot of money in the next 3 years, with, again, that last year, as you and I have talked about before, being partially like incentivized, and so like if he really has fallen off that cliff, that fourth year isn't as ugly as it looks like on paper if he hits
Well,
all
the
his
fourth year
metrics.
is optional.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think you're
So
right.
yeah,
But
and
the idea
I
like
also heard
Barcelona's
that I also heard that the third year um, is not fully optional, but we can choose to maybe like pay half a salary and cut him loose or something like that.
an early
But
termination. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
but the other thing, and this
but
is I don't want to jump the gun here, but imagine that he loses his starting spot this season. Um, then next summer, is he going to want to play a backup role for Barcelona, or is he going to go to a country with very sandy beaches and even more sandy interior of the country?
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jordan's friend Neymar and some of the other guys were there. All of them, Ronaldo, everybody from the Premier League. But yeah, and I think the other pushback and the other underreaction is like the idea that Barcelona isn't prepared for this. Like again, financially, they might not be prepared for Lewandowski to fall off a cliff in the next what is it, year and a half. But they went out and they spent the money on Vitor Roque. Like I mean, I was trying to think back. Like when was the last time Barcelona really did like earmark a young number nine and spend huge money on him and say this is gonna be our number nine that we're trusting financially for the future. And that guy is coming in January, right? So like this idea that like Lewandowski falling off a cliff is gonna kill Barcelona. It's like no, like financially that risk on Vitor Roque is just as risky as Lewandowski. Like if Vitor Roque doesn't pan out, like of course they're gonna have to eat like that huge transfer cost, as opposed to if Lewandowski, like what is he expected to give you? Like I would expect some kind of goal scoring regression, but in the same way as we talked about in predictions, like you'd hope that means Ansu is scoring more. You'd hope that Ferran Torres is scoring more. You hope that Vitor Roque in January, if he contributes 7 goals, 8 goals in the second half of the season, like you're hoping that Barcelona, especially if they're playing with two high interiors from Pedri and especially with, I mean, Gundogan almost had double-digit goals for Man City last year. So you are expecting you're getting more goal scoring from different spots of the field this year, despite Lewandowski. So it's like not to prepare for his decline, but you're expecting your team to be scoring in different ways this year.
Yeah. Of course, we also lost Usman.
He only had 6 goals,
So
or like what he had. Yeah, he had like 6 and was it 6 and 8 last year? 6 goals, 8 assists. So it's like I don't think they were really like structurally they were relying on him to create goals. I don't think Xavi really counted more than 5 goals from him in anticipation of his seasons.
no, but he creates a lot of space regardless.
Sure, that's what I'm saying. Like he creates goals. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, he has like 4 or 5 key passes per game almost,
Mhm.
and he consistently creates space because he draws at least 2 defenders whenever he gets the ball. So yeah, let's see how this pans out. I mean, it's a very weird season or a very weird summer where they just cannot seem to shut up about moving out Ansu,
Yeah.
because if you're talking about scoring goals, like you know, Ansu is a very good finisher, and he's ours. Like he's been at the club since what? Since he was 9, or since he was
In the sense
12.
of, yeah. Yep.
So I really don't understand all the noise about getting rid of Ansu. And Victor Roque, like honestly, a lot of people are very excited. People are saying that Lewandowski will lose his starting spot to Victor Roque when he joins us from Brazil. Um, and who knows, it might, you know, he might arrive and play very well from the start. But at the same time, I think he's 18 or 19.
19.
He's a 19-year-old kid who has never played in Europe, and we don't
No,
know
he's
if
18.
he's going
You're
to,
right. You're right.
we don't know if he's going to succeed or not.
No, yeah, you're right. He's on 19 until February. But yeah, so I think again that's what I was saying too about the Vitor Roque part of it. That like it's almost unprecedented for Barcelona to bring in an 18-year-old guy to say, okay, you're going to be the number 9 of the future. Like that, just it doesn't happen historically for this club. Like they get players for their number 9 who are in their prime already, 24, 25, 26, 27.
Mm,
Like that is their sweet spot for when they go out and spend big money. And they didn't
yeah,
pay
but
outrageous money for him, but they got him at an affordable cost at this point because they couldn't get him later because he was going to go somewhere else, and then his salary would be too high. Because right now,
exactly,
again,
the market has changed, right? Look at what Madrid
mhm.
paid for Vinicius when he was 16. What they paid for Kendrick when Kendrick was 15 still when Madrid signed him for 40 million.
I mean, look what they just paid for Endrick, who's
That's
16.
Endrick, not Kendrick. Endrick,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, he's
yeah,
16.
exactly. So, and Rodrigo was also very young when they signed him. So
He was
that
18 too.
is
Yep.
that is the price now. And if you want those Brazilian talents, when they're 18, 16, 17, that's when you move. I don't like it. I think it sucks for Brazilian football. Um, it's a disaster for Brazilian football. In fact, all those kids leaving so young. But yeah, this is the market in which we move.
All right. Well, let's move back to field a little bit with this underreactions, overreaction thing.
Right.
I kind of combine Xavi's game plan or Xavi's system. I don't know. Which one do you want to do first, Xavi, or do you want to try to separate that idea from Pedri and Gundogan in midfield?
Whatever you want then.
Okay. Well, then we're gonna do Pedri and the G man before we delve into Xavi because I think all that's connected too.
The G-Man, I like it.
Are you overreacting or underreacting? Well, that's because I always say it wrong. Are you overreacting or underreacting to the slow start from Gundogan and the not say slow start from Pedri, but even through preseason, like we have not seen too much of Pedri, even against Getafe. The last like 10 minutes before he came off the field, things were starting to happen. Things were starting to work. He was in better spots. He was kind of finding the game, but it took him about 60 minutes to find the game. And again, it was against Adafe, very physical. They were playing 5 and sometimes 6 at the back. Everything was congested in the middle of the park. Not a lot of room for him to work. And not he. I mean, obviously, when they went down to 10 men, a lot of the time that Pedri was on the field, they were down a man as well. So, are you? I'm kind of like hedging my bet there for you, but are you overreacting or underreacting to the slow starts from Xavi's two high interiors? And you can connect this to Xavi playing four midfielders. I'm not calling it a box four. I'm not like married to that idea because again, it still does operate as what we keep talking about, a 3-2-2-3. That's how it continues to operate. So I'm not calling it, a box midfield. That's not the way it is. Balde's on the left there. But are you overreacting or underreacting to the midfield play so far from those two high interiors in a system that Xavi seems married to?
Yeah. So if if you're gonna play on a potato, if you're gonna play a rugby match on a potato field, play Gavi.
Mm-hmm. I don't. His back's not fit yet. That was the problem. I think
That
he
was
would
the
have
issue.
started. I agree. I think he would have started if his back was fit, 100%. But he only played one preseason match.
True. True. But he started that preseason, his last preseason match, though, didn't he?
Yeah, but he only played 45 minutes. And they pulled him.
Mm, okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
my
So
theory
okay.
is I
So
think
that
he's only 85%
that
fit. That's why I didn't start.
that might be it. No, no. I don't think this is a good match to judge them by. Um, they still need to get used to each other. I don't know that um, that I would play Gundogan in that false left winger role in which he started to complete that box. Um, and I don't know that this was the best lineup um, for Getafe. I don't quite understand why Xavi insists with always playing with that box midfield. Um, I think there are matches where it'd be nice to see three forwards. I've also asked myself, because Lewandowski's form has dipped together with that switch
Mm-hmm.
to the four-man midfield.
It is interesting. Yeah.
So this might also be impacting Lewandowski's performances. Because when we changed, it was because in big matches, Xavi felt that he needed a bit more control. But the first half of last season, I think we had more points than the second half last season. And the first half of last season, we mostly played with 3 forwards.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm rather than judging how Perry or Gundogan played in that midfield in their first official game together on a poor pitch versus a team that was not playing according to the rules, or at least versus a referee that was not playing according to the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's more the 4-man midfield that I have doubts on.
Mm-hmm. Well, to continue to speak about that midfield, are you overreacting or underreacting to what I would call a really good start from Romeu in his time at Barcelona?
Besides that first match versus Arsenal, in which I think we were terrible, Uriel has been quite good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly
Yeah, I mean, I think.
surprised.
Well, I think the one thing that he doesn't do, or the things that he doesn't do, leads me to my next overreaction, and it's that there is an issue to me, and I'm going to overreact to this. There is an issue to me with the Kunde Araujo and even when Cancelo arrives situation, because as I keep saying and reiterating, I know people want Fresneda and Ana Martinez, and I would love if Barcelona went out and bought those players. But, and this is a big but, like, you know that even if they were starting in a normal team or regular team, with Christensen and Inigo Martinez and Kunde and Araujo, with those 4 center backs, you cannot tell me that Xavi is going to consistently start Fresneda or Ana Martinez over Kunde or Araujo at right back with Christensen and the other one of the two or Inigo Martinez at center back. Like, it's just like depth chart wise, there's no way he's going to put the teenage or the 20-year-old in case of Arnau in for regular consistent starts. And so this year, Xavi's saying, well, who will I trust on a Champions League night? Who is going to actually change my team enough that I will start them and sit Christensen on the regular in some kind of gala 11 against Bayern Munich or Man City or whoever? And Cancelo is the answer to that question. And it's like, again, like I know you refute it because of the future potential, and people will talk themselves into and believe that Arnau and Fresneda are ready for those moments and prepared now. But again, like Fresneda is still a teenager, and there's a teenager on the other side playing left back who's certainly trusted and almost the exception to the rule. And the real question I have for Barcelona then is like, even if they did take Fresneda and just the Cancelo stuff broke down because Man City wants too much of an obligation clause in there, and they ask for 70 million as the obligation clause, then Barcelona have to hang up the phone, and then they immediately have to go out and plead that Real Valladolid find the time to sell them Fresneda, because that would be what would happen the next few days. But it seems like
The the,
Cancelo is going to
the
happen. But
Cancelo talks have broken down now, because I heard that he's gonna come.
I know, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the only way that they would break down is if Man City like pulled some kind of fast one and said, "Yeah, we actually want the obligation to buy to be like 70 or 80 million." Like, that's the only way that these would break down at this point. So that's going to happen. Now, what I'm overreacting to about that problem is that the Araujo Kunde situation, right back and center back. People are like, okay, Kunde is playing right center back because Xavi wants him to be happy. But as I said, like in the 5 headlines, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I looked at that match and every match so far in the preseason. What Romeu does not do that Busquets did, and I think the biggest thing is that Romeu does not hit those long balls, or he doesn't squeeze and risk it in for tackles near the sidelines as well, and then ping a long ball to the opposite side and switch play. He doesn't do that. De Jong is doing that more. Pedri is dropping a little bit deeper at times and doing that. Or why I thought Kunde was arguably the man of the match against Getafe, Kunde is the one doing that. And that is a skill, that long diagonal ball from the right deep part of the position for Barcelona. Ter Stegen does it straight to the middle, looking for Lewandowski, but that ball over to Balde, or in the second half, Abde, primarily was coming from Kunde. That's a ball that Araujo can hit
Rafa
occasionally.
hit a couple of them.
He did.
Versus Getafe.
He did, but I think that's the argument that Araujo can do it, and that's why he's still playing right back. That's why he's not off the field. But I think that Xavi's trusting Kunde to hit those balls against deep, low blocks. Like, I think he's trusting Koundé a little bit there more in the center of the field to hit those balls to both sides more than he is Araujo in that same situation. So I would expect Araujo against almost any team, against Real Sociedad, Real Betis, and Villarreal and Sevilla. I think Araujo is still that starting right center back. But I can see the argument as to why Koundé has been playing right center back because of his superior ability to play the ball than Araujo. And I think the minute Cancelo shows up, I mean, now Xavi's, not to say trusting Araujo to do that, but it's all flipped this year because Balde is now, not to say Dembele, but now that space is for Balde in behind on the left or Abde in behind on the left. And you don't, the necessity to Rafinha to the right is happening less than it is to Balde on the left. Like, they're not expecting Balde to pick it up in his own half and then take it over in the way that they are for Rafinha. Like, Rafinha is getting the ball in deeper positions than Balde is for those long diagonal balls. So that's my only thinking.
Well,
As
I would hope so because
but
Rafinha is a forward and Balde is a left back.
I mean, is he though? Like, Balde is in again this 3-2-2-3. He has defensive responsibilities. So does Rafinha. But in this build up, like, Balde is as heat map wise as good as a forward is in that position.
Balde
Until
tracks back.
Abde came on. Until Abde came on, then I think it completely switched because they did move to a 4-3-3, and it all kind of got flipped that way.
Balde tracks back a lot more than Rafinha.
Of course he does, because he's a left back. Like, that's responsibility.
And a lot deeper. So, whereas Rafinha won't come back as much. I have another theory here. I think Araujo is a better right back than Koundé, especially the way that he's been playing in the preseason and even yesterday against Getafe. I think Koundé was very underwhelming as a right back. Not necessarily his fault because he's not a right back. And Araujo, his build-up play is a little bit underrated. He hit some smart passes versus Getafe and also during preseason. He is also more of a threat when there's open space because with his speed, he can absolutely take advantage of that, and he has shown this a bunch of times when he played right back, where he just blasts past his defender. He might not always have the final ball, but that threat is a lot more pronounced than when Koundé plays there. So in the couple of games that Araujo plays as a right back, he threatens more than Koundé the whole season.
I think he's also a better center back than Koundé. I mean, look at the first 5 minutes in that Getafe match. Latase gets in behind Koundé, and I don't think Araujo gets beat in the same way. And Koundé puts him off, but I mean, it was just way too close. Playing with fire, potentially a red. So I think we got to the bottom of it. Like, it's not a diss on Koundé. Like, I'm not trying to be negative on Koundé.
Mm-hmm.
It's fair that around Araujo, one of your team captains, is just better at center back and better at right back. Like, that's just how it is.
Also, but I think the difference between Araujo at right back and Koundé at right back is bigger than the difference between Araujo at center back and Koundé at center back.
Gotcha.
Also taking Koundé's on the ball qualities into account from center back, where he's a lot more comfortable bringing the ball up than Araujo.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, I know you're gonna say underreacting here, but it was a weird thing. I felt like there was a huge pushback on Xavi after this match. Whether it was his comments, it felt like people were saying, "Hey, this guy is not accountable to bad results. He's not accountable to failing to break down Getafe." And I just felt like it was a weird start to the season. Like, we know that the first few games, if you don't start well, there's a huge pushback, a huge overreaction. I take you back to 2008 and this guy named Pep Guardiola and the pushback after his first 6 matches in charge. Like, you go back and it happens. And for Xavi, yeah, I don't know. Like, I know that you're going to say underreaction, but I want to hear why you're underreacting to Xavi's comments after the match. Again, his lack of, I wouldn't call lack of accountability, but it does always sound like he's like, hey, here was the problem outside of our world, outside of Barcelona. Here was the problem with that match, as opposed to, he very rarely is Xavi like truly critical of the project itself.
look, my only problem with Xavi is that he does not protect Ansu Fati. Um, that that to me is a bigger problem than any lineup or any game plan he can come up with. Because Ansu Fati is 20 years old and he can literally mark an error. So for me, that is the only problem. Like he should clearly say, "Hey, this guy is untouchable." As for the match, we haven't beaten Getafe away in the last 4 games. People need to calm. Pe- yeah, people need to calm down. The league is not won or lost in in the first game. We all saw how this game was refereed. We didn't play against Getafe. We played against Sotogrado. Um, you know, with a bit of luck, we would have won the game. I believe Gundogan had an excellent chance to score. Abde came close. Ansu came close. We should have gotten a penalty at the end, a stone cold penalty. Um, would a different lineup have, or a different game plan, um, have gotten us closer to a victory? Yeah, possibly, or not. You know,
Yeah,
it's football.
yeah. If Oromeu scores in the first half, Getafe has no answers to score a goal. Like Getafe had no ideas. Like there was nothing coming. Like they had 2 chances in the entire match. One in the first half, one in the second half.
Right.
Um, yeah, now working around the second half when Barcelona were better, but I mean, yes, obviously the red card helped out, and on that second yellow card for a rough tackle on Araujo, so 57th minute, and then here came the subs as well. Abde on for Christensen at halftime, that was big, and then Ansu Fati and Gabi coming on for Pedri and Gundogan also helped the game in the 79th. And then Lamine Yamal also coming on for Romeo in the 76th minute was important. So the next two obviously are about Abde and Lamine Yamal. We can kind of do these together. I am overrating the idea that Abde should start matches yet, or is like not still the sixth forward for me, because as much of what Abde can do for you, and again, like we know exactly what he does provide, and he does provide it. There was a number of moments in that game against Getafe that we saw what has to change between Osasuna Abde, who really did break out and improve, and the Barcelona version of him. Because for Osasuna, that 75th minute miss, the when he went wide off the feed from Pedri, like those are moments where Getafe, he had the green light. Like the change he made from before Getafe, I mean Osasuna rather, until after, was that he really did learn how to be the guy, how to take on players and be much more confident in creating some kind of finalized project, whether it was getting the ball on goal or finding a teammate in some way. And that part of his game was refined. But now coming back to Barcelona, he doesn't have that same green light. It's why Lewandowski went bananas on him and screamed at him, and it's why Lewandowski screamed at Ansu for the same reasons when Ansu blasted that one. And then Abde as well. He had one from like 35, 40 yards out somewhere in the 80 something minute. And those two moments like remind me that Abde still has to refine who he is at Barcelona, because that was Osasuna Abde, who was given the confidence, given the green light, and expected to like kind of be one of the guys in their attack and be important to them. And now he has a different job, a different role, but he still wants to have the same confidence and use the same skills. So it's like I'm overrating the idea that Abde is like, put him on the team sheet. Great. Like he still has a ways to go. And just because he has one or two really good dribbles, I am overrating the idea that like he's, let's say, ready for prime time. Like I think he still has a long way to go to refine his footing at Barcelona. He proved enough in the preseason, and that Arsenal game was a great example. Like there is a lot that Abde can provide to you, and I'm glad he stuck around. So I'm not overrating the idea that Abde should have gone out on loan. I think he's very clearly one of the forwards for this team, and he's good enough to be a forward for FC Barcelona, which is a compliment. Like it's a lot to say you're good enough to be a forward for FC Barcelona, and I think he definitely has improved as a refined product. But I'm overrating the idea that Abde is like ready to be some kind of savior before Ferran Torres or Ansu Fati on that front line.
Right. I think I know Abde is more comfortable on the left. But I don't see him as a very good left forward when Balde is on the pitch, because you need somebody who is more associative. You already have Balde for the dribbles.
I mean, that was summed up
But
when that ball
but
landed in between them in like
mhm.
the 80, what was it, the
Well,
82nd minute or something, like
yeah,
where the
but
ball.
that
I mean, that
that is
happened.
that's more something that happens when people don't play each other with each other, and both of
True.
them kind of think that they want to get it right. But just a profile and their way of playing, I'm not sure how compatible they are. At the same time, I look at our team and I look at Abde's skill set, and I don't understand why he's not played on the right,
Hmm.
because he can take on people and then he can cross the ball to Lewandowski, which seems to be more conducive than him on the left, where he does not really create space for Balde, because he does not really play in between the lines, um, and um, that pass and go that Ansu would have, um, like Ansu and Balde, are greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, I
Um,
think Ansu loses a little bit having to play a little more central. And what we've seen from Xavi, and we saw this all the way back in the days of Johan Cruyff, that when you have all of these attackers that have a bit of versatility to them, I mean, Ansu and Ferran Torres played most of their preseason minutes as, not to say number 10s, but basically as like secondary strikers in underneath, where Abde was the actual left winger and Rafinha at times was still on the right wing, and it was the other one. So like they were really
mhm,
playing as like these attacking midfielders when Barcelona know at the end of a game they're going to have 85 to 90% of possession and they're going to basically just be in the opponent's half. And Xavi kept putting on. Oh, and for this instance, it was Lamine Yamal in the preseason and in that game playing on the right wing, and that's where Xavi won. And which is the next and maybe the final, depending on unless you have one or two. Maybe for me at least, the final one to throw to you about overreactions, underreactions. Lamine Yamal start and like Adam says, I'm changing the bar a little bit for us because you and I are not overreacting to a 16-year-old playing in a Liga. Like you and I are not the kind that overreact and call him the next whatever. Like that is not what I'm in the game of. That's what I've not ever been in the game of. For people who heard me on the show, I talk about the young players trying to figure out, yeah, when they're good and you recognize they're good. Lamine Yamal, very good. Are you overreacting or underreacting? What kind of influence he could have on the first team this season?
but but here's the thing: for a 16-year-old to have any kind of influence is unbelievable. Just like it was unbelievable for Ansu to have an influence in his breakout season. Like those kids are so good. They can mark an era. The only thing that I'm concerned about regarding Lamine Yamal is he'll probably sign his next contract, but it's only going to be a 2-year or 3-year contract until he's 18, right? Um, will Barcelona be in a position 2 years from now in order to keep him? Or will the Premier League clubs or Paris Saint-Germain just say, hey, we're gonna give this guy 15 million a year at 18 years old?
I mean, his contract's up in June of 2024, so it would be. And he just signed his his first professional contract a month ago when he turned 16. So it
Exactly.
would,
So it's
yeah, it would
June
behoove Barcelona to
2024.
actually
That's one
renew
year.
him this coming summer.
Mhm. So yeah, I think that's the big concern.
Hmm.
Like the financial hole that we are in, and this this kid uh, breaking through right now just means that the offers that he's going to receive from other clubs are going to be huge.
Hmm.
So yeah, let's see what happens there. And his father is
Yeah,
Madridista. His father is a Madridista.
yeah. I mean, we say that, but I mean, that only matters when money talks, which is what you're saying. But in terms of like him turning his back on Barcelona because of X, Y, Z reason, because that's Madridista. Like, That
but I
long
mean,
term
you know,
like
if
that's not happening.
say Barcelona is going to say, well, you know, you're 18 years old, uh, and we're going to give you 5 million per year
Mm-hmm.
because you know we cannot give more to an 18-year-old right now. Maybe, you know, if somebody's from Masia and his families are diehard culés, they'd be over the moon.
Right.
But
I agree.
if you're from a family who does not have a lifelong connection to the club, and in fact at home they support Madrid, then you might say, well, instead of taking 5 million for Barca, I'm going to take 15 million from Paris Saint-Germain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between Xavi Simons and Pedri. That's the difference between the two.
I think Xavi Simons was more his path to the first team was not clear.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, he again, even the position he was playing was midfield, and good on PSG's youth academy to change him to more of an attacking midfielder, the kind of forward role, and that suited him. And then he blew up in Netherlands for PSV, and it's worked out since. But in the case of Lamine Yamal, I think even not thinking about him beyond this year, because I think that's where we get in trouble with that conversation, right? By like, what is he going to be? What what's going to happen with him? And I find it difficult, honestly, to talk about him match to match or just to review just Getafe, because again, against Getafe, he was good. Like he was influential. He received that diagonal ball onto his left, and then he delivered that ball bouncing for a really good run in from behind, from in behind Ansu. And it is challenging, right? Like when Christensen has a good game, I get to just say to you, Christensen was good against Getafe. Full stop. We bracket it, parentheses, boom, we're done. But when we used to talk about Lamine Yamal was good against Getafe, now it's open ended. There is no second parentheses. Like he was good against Getafe, so that means that he is a future legend of the club. Does that mean that he's going to be a starter by April? Does that mean that he's going to re-sign? Does that mean we're in trouble with his like? You know what I mean? Like it's so open ended. Every time I just try to say he was good against Getafe, and I think it's going to be a challenge for me and you and everyone else on this show over the next few months to be able to say, okay, what does Xavi need from, and when I say need, like what does he need from this 16-year-old right winger in the limited amount of time he is allowed to play because of his registration, by the way. So in the time that he's allowed to play, what does Xavi need from him? Did he provide that? And who is Lamine Yamal at 16 for Barcelona? Because I think Ansu, you and I just learned it. Like the lesson is Ansu at 16 was an absolute joy. And I tell people, enjoy that ride. Ansu at 16, he can be whatever he was going to be and become in the next 4 years, and we were there for it. But at 16, it was just fun. It was enjoyable, and that 16-year-old gave Ernesto Valverde everything and more he needed from 16-year-old Ansu. And I say the same thing with Lamine Yamal. Like regardless of what he becomes, wherever he becomes it, he certainly has the potential to be even more than I'm overrating. To go back to finalize the game, I'm overrating the idea that Lamine Yamal can actually be more helpful to Xavi than I even believed when the season began. I really thought that like, okay, if he makes eight performances or eight showings off the bench, like that would be great for him. I could see him ending the season having started 2 games and having come off the bench in 12 to 15 to 18 games. Like I can see that
Yeah,
being possible because of just how advanced and ready to go he is for the first team, regardless of what
I,
he is in the future.
I mean, you know, we played Spurs and he was the best man on the pitch for those 20
Exactly.
minutes. Like,
Exactly.
just ridiculous. He was literally the best footballer on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, this kid is special. And if injuries respect him, he will have an amazing future. I think the only concern is can we keep him?
Yeah. And again, to that point, that is not Xavi's concern until as soon as next summer. Like he's not signing any renewal basically until next summer at the earliest because he
Mm,
just signed the contract a month ago. So for
yeah.
now, again, he just put pen to paper. So Xavi's like, okay, great, he's my player right now, and I'm going to do what I want with him. So unless you have one for me, that might wrap up the show. So do you got anything?
That's a wrap, brother.
That is a
I,
wrap. Great. Overreacting, underreacting to the end of the show. I'm underreacting. I think it was time. It was time to call it a show. So follow him on Twitter, Barcelev, everywhere. You're gonna find him on Twitter, Instagram at the Barca Pod, Twitter for us, TikTok, Patreon, YouTube. You know where to find us. I do want to give some thank yous to people, listeners and watchers. on the YouTube stuff and the match reviews. It's been nice for me to not have to set up the camera and go through it like when everybody knows my medical stuff this fall, coming up in the fall and winter, whatever. Like, it's been nice to be able to just kind of get those out and get a little longer and then put those here on the podcast feed. And I think people respond to them well by listening and watching, and that tells me that people like them. So I do appreciate people kind of helping me figure out what the plan is for the foreseeable future right now as I continue to go through my stuff. So most importantly, though, thanks so much for listening to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon in Forza Barca.
Visca Barça.